I was in Israel as a student in 1949. I will never forget the vigor, the enthusiasm, the vitality of young Israelis at work on a kibbutz that I visited. I personally am a Christian, but I have an enormous admiration for Jewish history, for the Old Testament, for the meaning of Judaism. What makes you so certain that Israel must be defeated?
I didn't say that, ma'am. What I said is the U.S. has no interest in whether Palestine or Israel survive. That's ultimately there's nothing we get from them that we need.
That's not exactly what you said.
Well, that's what I meant.
But you said Israel should be defeated.
I said we should dump the Israelis.
No, that's not,
Why?
Those were not your words.
Well, that's what I intended.
Notes, and you said Israel must go.
It must go. It must go. From our policy is what I meant. We were talking about policy. There's no reason to support the Israelis or the Palestinians. How insane is a policy?
Do you think that once Israel disappears, the Middle East becomes a democracy?
I'm not saying that. Israel can exist forever, but not with another American dollar.
I'm glad that you allow it.
Oh, you know, that's such a nonsense argument that people who support Israel make. No country has a right to exist. The United States doesn't have a right to exist. Bolivia doesn't have a right to exist. Germany doesn't. A country exists if it gets along with its neighbors, if it has a cohesive society, and if it has an economy that's viable. That's why a country exists. If a country should exist, we should all be rallying to Mubarak. We should be trying to restore the Soviet Union or the Latin Kingdom of Jerusalem. I've spent my whole life listening to that idiot argument and people saying that it comes from God or something. The idea that an American soldier or American dollar is spent on a country who says it belongs to the land because God gave it a deed 3,000 years ago, if that's what that country believes in, I think that's fine. But I don't want to support that kind of nonsense.
Okay, I think we got to stop there.
I've always enjoyed listening to your analysis since you sort of went public and were around. Assuming everything you say is true, and there's no reason to think that it's not, what would that tell us about what our strategy should be instead of what our strategy is?
Our strategy really should be the truth. What I tried to do in the book is to point out that everything Mr. Clinton, Mr. Bush, and Mr. Obama have told Americans about what this war is being waged about is absent from the corpus of that material, with one exception, a short speech in December of 2001. There is no railing or ranting against women in the workplace. He doesn't call for the blood of Iowans because they vote in early presidential primaries every 4 years. There's no denunciation of Budweiser, no hate for freedom. So we are fighting an enemy that doesn't exist. We're fighting our presidents, our leaders in both parties want us to fight some sort of a nihilist madman. And we would be very lucky if we were, but we're not. Whether through sheer luck or a bit of genius, he's hooked on to 6 different American policies that are inextricably bound up with American domestic politics, and no president wants to talk about them.
But if Obama came to you and said, I agree with what you say, now what should I do about that?
First, tell the truth to the American people. And I really think of the 6 things that he lists, the one we need to do first is something about energy. If we had done something in the last 40 years to free ourselves and even more today, our allies, from our need for oil out of the Gulf, there's nothing on the Arabian Peninsula that's worth the life of a Marine. except for oil. And if you freed yourself from oil, you wouldn't have to support the Saudi police state, which oppresses just as badly as the Mubarak government does. So that's a place to start.
And how about Israel?
Israel's got to go. You know, that's from my perspective, and you know, my opinion is worth exactly my opinion. But Israel is such a difficult question because even facts aren't facts. Israel, beyond a doubt, our relationship with the Israelis is a disaster for U.S. interests and policies in the Muslim world. Now, that's a fact. Whether you want to continue support for Israel or not is the discussion that needs to be made and decided not by me, but by Americans generally. But we never get that chance. And so now we're in the very ridiculous position of waiting for one morning to wake up and have 300 million of us at war with Iran because Netanyahu gets a little bit antsy. I said this morning, I was on TV, and I said, you know, what the president is not telling you is that Israeli security depends on tyranny. It depends on the tyrants who govern Jordan and Syria and Egypt. And the unfriendly email I've gotten in the last 6 hours has been extraordinary. But I thought that was just an obvious fact. So I think there's a whole number of issues. The support of, you know, how can the president, if he was honest, would say, we're sending your sons and daughters to die in Iraq to make sure the Saudi royal family isn't threatened by Saddam or anybody else, or oil continues to flow. But they're not going to say that. They're going to say liberty, democracy, freedom.
And women's rights.
I'm sorry?
And women's rights.
Yeah. If it's bad for a Marine to die on the peninsula, imagine being the parent of a young man or woman who died so Mrs. Mohammed can vote. There certainly has to be idiocy in that idea.